Carl, what have you done?
Think anyone will notice?
Mr. Carl Jackson.
Carl Jackson was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. After the sudden death of his mother at the age of 11, he moved between LA and Orlando, Florida, trying to find his way in life.
So I'm clearly a Carl Jackson fan.
Carl Jackson.
Carl Jackson.
Carl Jackson.
Although he was introduced to hard work, faith, and family values, as a struggling teen, he wandered down the path of least resistance, finding himself jailed twice. By the grace of God, he attended an evangelical church and found that there was a better way and accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior.
There's just no fake stuff about Carl Jackson.
Now, on the Salem Podcast Network, Carl has launched on a journey to help people of all races and backgrounds to discover facts of America's true past, as well as realize the benefits of utilizing their God-given gifts and talents, which far outweigh any benefit from a government subsidy or program.
Real dangerous out here. Let's roll, Carl.
Get going fast.
Redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I'm glad, or let me just say hello to everyone. Listen, we all witnessed the disastrous State of the Union speech, and I want to go through it. You guys noticed that there was little on crime, there was little on inflation, there was little mention of COVID, because all of these issues are absolutely disastrous to the Biden administration and to Democrats leading up into 2022, November of 2022, the midterm election, obviously. So there's a lot that I want to touch on. I want to do some fact checking here because the guy lied from get to go, but obviously they have to. His poll numbers are tanking like no one's business. And Democrats are fearful. They're fearful that it's going to be a bloodbath. Now, never underestimate the Republican Party's ability to screw that up and to lose elections. But the bottom line is people are fed up with the Biden administration. They know it. He tried to give a rah-rah speech. The problem is with this rah-rah speech, the State of the Union speech is going to fade away. What isn't going to fade away is the fact that you're going to be paying exorbitant. We're all going to be paying exorbitant gas prices, exorbitant food prices. We're still going to witness the supply chain shortage. Never mind getting good customer service in some of the places that you used to love to frequent, whether that be a store, whether that be a restaurant or some other service business, because it is too hard to hire workers today, and also because small business has been decimated. So let's do some fact checking here. Biden said that his report is this: the State of the Union is strong, and I'm quoting, because you, the American people, are strong, close quote. Now, Biden has done everything that he can, and the Democrat Party, with the help of Demand Justice and these oligarchs of big tech and these major corporations, have done everything they can to destroy the working class, the middle class, within the last year. But he's right, we're strong, and we can't wait to exercise our voting muscles and kick many of these people out in November of 2022, November of this year. We cannot wait. But he's lying to say that the State of the Union is strong, because we all know it isn't. Biden is asking us to not believe our to don't believe our lying eyes, essentially. Everything that we see and experience happening right in front of our eyes, Biden says, no. All is good. All is good. The economy is great. Job numbers are soaring, so on, etc. So let's get into the big lies. Let's just mention them. I'll mention them real quickly, and then we'll go back to them. Obviously, what's in the news today, what's big, is Russia's invasion on Ukraine. Or into Ukraine territory. So obviously we'll touch on that. Biden did the same. So we're going to touch on that. He says we were ready for Putin's invasion. We know that's a lie. We'll dig into that. The state of the economy and the job market. We'll dig into that. The future of manufacturing jobs. We'll dig into that as well. Also, the American Rescue Plan versus the tax cuts plan. We'll dig into that. Trump's tax cuts versus the American Rescue Plan. We'll find out which is better. Assessing the tax burden and inflation. We'll dig into that, and we have some audio clips for you as well. For those of you that might be watching and tuning in on video, you see my formerly fingerprinted fingertips doing a lot of work because we try to do as much as we can to make sure that you're informed. So you might hear some pages flipping. All right. Lower your cost and lower deficit. Biden claimed that he would do that, or he has done that. We'll go through that. We'll talk about the rising energy costs. We'll talk about fiscal responsibility. Has the Biden administration been fiscally responsible? A lot to get to, a lot of topics to get to, but we're going to try to fly through this and debunk all of Biden's lies, at least 10 of the most significant, pretty quickly. He talked about suppressing and subverting the vote, always claiming that Republicans are the racists, even though we know that they are the party. The Democrats are the party of the KKK and the party, the non-civil rights party, until it became expedient for them to embrace the black community. All right, so here's what Biden said at the end of his speech. He said, "We are stronger today than we were a year ago, and we will be stronger a year from now than we are today. Now is our moment to meet and overcome the challenges of our time, and we will as one people." Now, when he says one people, I get a little nervous because you know that the left has been trying to crush freedom lovers. The left has been trying to crush patriots. So we're going to fact check 10 things that I just went over. So, were we ready for Putin's invasion of Ukraine? Well, here's what Biden said, and I quote, "Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos," close quote. But then he goes on further, and I quote, "They keep moving, and the costs and threats to America and the world keep rising." So this guy wants to act like a tough guy, Biden does. We know that there are 30 nation members that exist within the NATO military alliance. We are one of them, obviously, the United States of America. Biden goes on to say, "It matters. American diplomacy matters." And he's right, it does matter. Putin's war was premeditated and unprovoked. He rejected efforts at diplomacy. No, you just got taken to the cleaners. You were a complete and utter imbecile. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond, and he thought that he could divide us here at home. Putin was wrong. We were ready. No, Biden is a complete and utter liar. The reason why Putin knew that he could take advantage of Biden, because what did we do? We literally sat by while Biden closed the XL pipeline, right? Closed the XL pipeline and closed down oil and energy production here, fossil fuel production here in the United States. He's doing all he can to clamp down on it, on federal properties anyway, and basically just gave the work to Russians. I mean, just to this day, we're buying oil from Russia, so we're helping to subsidize what's happening with Ukraine. We're helping to subsidize Putin's invasion into Ukraine. So we witnessed that. Biden shutting down XL pipeline and giving permission to Putin to open up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, bypassing Ukraine, making them weak, energy weak, right? And helping out Germany, who are part of NATO, but just a pretty weak country. It's amazing, and I'm thankful that they're finally standing up. So that's one thing that Biden did. Not to mention that he totally ignored a couple of attacks, a couple of cyber attacks. One on a pipeline by Putin. We knew that it was Putin, or knew that it was some Russians that. And let's be honest, no one is going to do no cyber attacking person, if you will, for loss of words right now, but no person that's going to attack our cyber infrastructure from Russia is not going to have the go-ahead by Putin to do so. So they attacked a pipeline. They attacked our meat industry with the cyber attack the Russians did, and Biden did absolutely nothing about it. As a matter of fact, if you recall correctly, what he did was give about 16 points where people needed to be hands off. All right, or he told Putin, these are the parts of the infrastructure that you cannot touch, essentially giving Vladimir Putin permission to attack parts of our infrastructure. Biden is a complete and utter imbecile. I don't say that lightly, but that is the case. Also, here's the truth. Russian troops were massing on the Ukrainian border ever since November. The Ukrainian president, and actually even before that, but the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, urged Biden to impose sanctions on Russia before the invasion occurred as a preventative measure. Biden never did that. He didn't have the courage to do that. Also, the Biden administration and our European allies imposed sanctions on Russia's financing a day after Putin invaded Ukraine. Just a little bit too late. You mean that I can attack a country and you're going to impose sanctions on me after I do it? I'm thinking Putin already had a plan in place, thinking ahead, definitely ahead of Biden and the Democrats. Also, once they did announce the sanctions, here's what Biden said. The sanctions we've imposed exceed SWIFT. The sanctions we impose, and SWIFT is an acronym. I'll get into that, SWIFT. The sanctions we impose exceed anything that has ever been done. And then 2 days later, European countries agreed to block Russia from SWIFT. And SWIFT is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, or telecommunication. So that's the primary international banking system SWIFT is. And this move could potentially cut Putin off from the global finance market. And so far, it has been doing that, but it's too little, too late. If they would have started doing this earlier, if they would have started sending weaponry, when I say they, I'm talking about the NATO allies, and then we wouldn't see the invasion. Yes, you can say if Trump wasn't in, we wouldn't be seeing the invasion of Russia into Ukraine. You're exactly right. And part of the reasoning is Russia and China, I believe, both feared and respected Trump. They had reverence for Trump because Trump was acting in America's national interest. Xi Jinping and Putin are acting in their national interest. But and then you get these metrosexuals of NATO, like the Macrons of the world, so on, etc. The guy from Canada, all of these. Why do I forget the dictators? Wannabe dictator Trudeau in Canada. You get all of these metrosexuals. Putin doesn't respect them, but here's what they want. They want this great reset. So you have these metrosexuals with the World Economic Forum and NATO. They want the great reset, but then you have you have Putin, you have you have Xi Jinping, and you had us with Trump that didn't want to be a part of that. We just want our own national interest. We want to stay strong. So this is partly what we're dealing with. So this is what I'm calling the Green New Deal war, or the green energy war, because Putin felt threatened by NATO. Putin felt threatened by the World Economic Forum. And as a strong man, listen, the only thing that he has to hold on to in Russia, and I'm not excusing anything he's done. I think he should be hanged, quite frankly. I do think he's a thug. I think he's a dictator. I think he's a tyrant. But I don't want to give Biden any leeway. They could have cut him off. They know that he's a strong man that's interested in oil. Putin is. So if you want to end the war with Ukraine, if you wanted to end the invasion into Ukraine, all you had to do, Joe Biden and Democrats, was open XL pipeline back up. Done, finito. That would have sent a signal to Putin. This guy isn't playing games. This is why he knew not to mess with Trump, but he does know to mess with Biden. Here's what happened under Trump. Under Trump, the United States became a net exporter of oil. So by drilling, by fracking, by doing all of the above, and our environment was clean as well, we became a leading, or the next exporter of oil, the leading exporter of oil around the world. And that boosted our nation's energy independence. We were energy independent for the first time in God knows how long. It was several decades. So now, but Biden killed that. again, he killed that. He killed that by killing the XL pipeline and then emboldening Putin, helping Putin basically, or giving Putin the permission to reopen or to open up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And now we're buying oil from Russia. That is insane. So Biden did too little, too late. But they reversed, both Biden and Germany finally reversed course on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. But listen, Putin had already invaded Ukraine. So that's going to hurt. But what's going to happen is Putin is going to be selling oil to China, who is also concerned about their national interests, and they want to be the top dog in the world. They want to influence America. They want to influence these NATO countries and all of these people associated with the World Economic Forum. So they have their best interests at heart. So Putin is determined to build Russia back to its stature of old. China has their own interests at heart. The World Economic Forum, those metrosexuals, and all of the metrosexuals that are in NATO, they've just done too little too late. They really have. So we got to wait and see how this plays out. Biden goes on to say, tonight I can announce, and that was last night, I can announce that the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. The problem with that, of those 30 nations, do you know that we released 30 million from our reserve? And why are we releasing any oil from our reserves? That should be held in case of an emergency. And this is not an emergency per se. All we need to do is drill, baby, drill. As Sarah Palin used to say, all we need to do is drill, baby, drill. We can frack, baby, frack. We can do all of that. Just reopen the XL pipeline, reopen the federal lands to leasing so that these energy companies can come in and drill, baby, drill. But Biden isn't going to do that. Instead, he's going to release 30 million barrels into our strategic oil reserve, which is a blip on the radar. That isn't going to do jack squat when it comes to rising energy costs. He just wants you to forget. Ultimately, they want to drive you to green energy. That's why I'm calling this the Green Energy War, or the Green New Deal War. Total hack. All right, state of the economy and the job market. I want to get into that next. But first, I want to play an audio clip for you. Audio clip number 1, Gabe. I want to talk about the Buy American, and what about the Buy American, basically, is what Biden talks about. If you can get that queued up for me, you let me know when it's ready, and then we'll go right ahead. All right, so let's go ahead with this audio clip. Here's Joe Biden on Buying American.
Announcing that this year we will start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair. And folks, when we use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America, we're going to do it by buying America. Buy American products. Support American jobs. To make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it. All of it. All of it.
Okay, so I do believe in buying American. I do believe in made in America. Unless we have a trade advantage somewhere else that really helps us right now, I don't believe we have a trade advantage. We have plenty of trade deficits of these countries that we still believe we treat them like China, as if they're developing countries when they are not. They are trying to eat our lunch, and with Joe Biden's help, they're going to do exactly that. Maybe that's why. Maybe he should be called Lunchbox Joe, because China is going to eat our lunch and eat everything from Joe Biden's lunchbox. But he's decimated the American economy. This guy's decimated the American economy. And we'll get into that a little bit. But, I mean, he's basically paying welfare to the middle class. People aren't going back to work. We'll dive into that. But here's what he said on the economy. He also said, in fact, and I quote, "Our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs last year, more jobs created in 1 year than ever before in the history of America." Also, he goes on to say, end quote, he goes on to say, and I quote, "Our economy grew at a rate of 5.7% last year. That's the strongest growth," he says, "in nearly 40 years. That's the first step and bringing fundamental change to the economy that hasn't worked for the working people of this nation for too long. Now, that is a doggone lie. What's the truth? The truth is the 6.5 million jobs, we all know this, were people returning after being laid off as a result of the pandemic. So for this liar, he's playing you for a fool. He's calling you an idiot. When he gives you this information, I want you to understand that every single time he's calling you an idiot. So he's saying the 6.5 million people returning to work, and that's some of you, that's many of you in the listening audience. He's saying that he created a job for you, when we all know damn well that all that happened was Trump shut down the economy, and as a result of the Wuhan pandemic, Trump shuts down the economy. People are no longer going to work, and then finally these people come back to work after some time later, and now Biden is trying to count those jobs and take credit for people just returning to work. It's absolutely asinine, but the truth is the total number of jobs is still far below what it was, or those returning far below what it was under Trump's administration in 2020, when the U.S. initially lost 9.5 million jobs. So you at least have 3 million people that have not returned to the labor force. Not to mention, we have a total labor force shortage, a record labor force shortage of 11 million jobs. People simply not returning to work. Here's what an a labor expert from the Heritage Foundation had to say, Rachel Gressler, and I quote: "Job openings currently at 10.9 million are 40% above the pre-pandemic record, and more than double the prior 10-year average." Let me read that again. Job openings are currently at 11 million, 10.9 million, but rounding up to 11, are 40% above the pre-pandemic record and more than double the prior 10-year average. Folks, we have a severe labor shortage, and the Democrat Party and Biden and Demand Justice are doing everything they can to exacerbate that. See, Democrats do good when you do bad. Democrats succeed when you fail. That's what you need to understand. Their whole modus operandi is to keep you dependent upon the government, and that way you're dependent on the Democrat Party because you're a perpetual victim. That's what they want. That is what they want. So you have employers that are struggling, with 49% of businesses reporting job openings that they are unable to fill because too many people in the middle class are now on welfare, thanks to Biden and his Build Back Better plan, which I'll get into later. It's actually a Build Back Broke plan, a Build Back Welfare plan. That's what the Build Back Better plan actually is. So, and plus, inflation has screwed up wages. So you have the labor shortage that has led to overall wage increases. That's 5.7% on average of wage increases over the past year. So you say, man, that's good. Things are really tough. So I'm glad there's 5.7% increase in wages. Well, there's a problem because real wages have declined by about 2% because of inflation. So instead of getting a pay raise, it's almost as if, despite the fact that you've gotten a pay raise, in actuality, because of Biden inflation, you've gotten a pay cut. The guy is a complete and utter disaster. All right, here's what CNBC had to say. Employers have raised wages at about the fastest rate in 15 years as they compete for talent amid record job openings and quit levels. But consumer prices for goods and services are rising at their fastest annual pace in 4 decades, eroding those gains for many Americans. So there's another audio clip that I would like to play for you. Gabe, if you'll get together audio clip number 2, talking about fighting inflation. Let's hear that.
To drive down wages and make Americans poor. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. Folks, that means make more cars and semiconductors in America, more infrastructure and innovation in America, more goods moving faster and cheaper in America, more jobs where you can earn a good living in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America.
Okay, so this guy went MAGA on you. This guy went straight up, make America great again. He's an idiot. This guy is an idiot. This guy is an imbecile. And it is totally insulting that he's lying to us right before our face. So it's because the reason why we're in high inflation is because of this guy constantly spending our money and telling us that we're not going to be impacted when he prints, borrows, and spends our money, or prints more money and also borrows and spends more of our money. So we get to dish out our credit cards to help Biden, and he tries to claim credit for you. Essentially, the government, you have to understand this. The federal government makes nothing. The only thing that they do worthwhile is the military. And unfortunately, Mark Milley and Lloyd Austin are destroying our military with this nonsense, critical race theory and all this kind of stuff. So they're doing their best to destroy the men and women of our military. But Biden talks about lower costs, tells employers to lower costs and not wages. How the hell are we going to lower costs and not wages when we are so dependent on China? And they've got so much dirt on Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and China. The same is true for Russia, Ukraine. We're talking about probably the most corrupt president to ever sit in the White House. He's a complete and utter puppet. But it also shows that the guy doesn't understand the real world. He doesn't understand business. He doesn't even understand how his inflation affects small businesses. So there's a supply chain shortage. There are fewer supplies. We've got too many dollars fluctuating or floating around in the economy. And that's essentially inflation. When there's way too many dollars, we got all this money and we only got a few products. So all of us have to compete and pay more for certain products because there just aren't enough products to go around. And you can blame Democrats who are trying to run away from COVID. I didn't see Anthony Fauci there. Did you see Anthony Fauci at the State of the Union? They're trying to run away from COVID as fast as they can because these people have spent the last year trying to intentionally destroy your lives. Intentionally trying to destroy your lives so that you're dependent upon government. But again, going back to lower costs, not wages. Well, if there's a supply chain shortage, people are paying more, but the costs are exorbitant. In some industries, costs are up 400, 600, 600%. We know what's happening with the real estate market and the supplies needed there. We know what's happening in the meat industry. The prices are going up. So we can't we can't lower cost, right? Because the Biden administration sucks so much, they're screwing that up, but they want us to pay more, and they want to get accolades for it. So only people that don't understand economics 101 will buy into this. The future of manufacturing and jobs in America. So this is what Biden said. All told, we created 369,000 new manufacturing jobs in America just last year. So Biden claims that he brought back U.S. Manufacturing. He said Ford and General Motors had created 11,000 and 4,000 jobs respectively, saying it was evidence that manufacturing is returning. So he's talking about two major corporations that were subsidized by the U.S. government at one point. Not the mom and pop shop, not the little job. So, okay, so there's manufacturing going on in the United States right now. Listen, kudos. I'm glad those two major corporations had created 11,000 and 4,000 jobs respectively. Woohoo. All right, so I'm glad that is happening. But this isn't all necessarily we could be doing so much better. Here's what the Bureau of Labor Statistics said. About 179,000 more Americans were employed in manufacturing in 2021 than the previous year. That is due, however, close quote, that is due to COVID. Honestly, COVID has opened our eyes, and it's made people realize, listen, we've got to do more manufacturing inside of the United States, but how much more if we had somebody that actually knew what they were doing at the helm? Also, the same Bureau of Labor Statistics data indicates that employment is not yet at pre-pandemic levels. We talked about this. So we're still not, 6.5 million people, supposedly jobs created, 6.5 million people coming back to the labor force, but there's still 3 million people at least missing from the Trump era. So companies are choosing to build new factories here. And just a few years ago, this is according to Biden, they would have built them overseas. And that is so not true. Companies were were deciding to come back under Trump, except the companies that absolutely hated him. But what has to happen is America has to be more competitive on the world stage. There's no way of getting around that. So American competitiveness is a vital part of the economy. Our manufacturing industry obviously is a vital part of the economy, and that's going to be the best way to bolster our manufacturing and the economy as a whole by keeping America competitive. But Biden's policies have failed to do that. So any perceived benefits from returning manufacturing jobs, they will be limited. Additionally, purchasing American-made materials just because they were made in the USA. Listen, I believe in purchasing materials that are made in the USA. I'm also okay with purchasing materials from our allies as long as we have the trade advantage. All right, the American Rescue Plan versus the Trump tax, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act under Trump. So let's get to that. So Biden was bragging about the American Rescue Plan, the COVID-19 relief bill that he and the Democrats crafted. He said this. He said, and unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind. Now, this is an utter lie. Remember, when they talk about tax cuts, understand what tax cuts are. You get to keep your money. So Biden and these idiots in the Democrat Party, actually these selfish, I won't say it. These selfish bums in the Democrat Party are literally telling you, hey, you work, we eat. All right, you go out, you go bust your butt, and instead of giving your money to your family first, I want you to give that money to us, to the federal government. What you earn belongs to us. Us first, as if they're the Church of God or something. It's crazy. They want you to give your tithe and then some to them. Your tithe 5 times over in some cases. So this is absolutely insane. So first off, Biden wants you to believe he's lying to you because he wants you to believe that the government somehow produces money and you benefit from that when what they're actually doing is taking money from you. So here's what happened with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Supported by Donald Trump and the Republicans that were in Congress at the time. It benefited all working Americans and not just the top 1%. And many economists know this to be true. As a matter of fact, there were people that were getting back $1,000 checks and more and so on, etc. at the time, going out and buying merchandise with their return check or whatever that they get back under Trump, putting it on Twitter, Facebook, or etc. I'm sure you can't find that right now because nobody wants to make Trump look good. So the tax cuts were the largest for the lowest income Americans and smallest for the top 1%. The top 1% actually end up paying more in taxes under Trump's tax cut. You hear Sean Hannity, as a matter of fact, talk about this often. But, he has a lot of money. He doesn't mind, and he mentions that on air. Okay. Also, about 83,000 more Americans left their jobs for better options at the end of 2019. This marked a surge in new job openings for the year after the passage of the Trump tax cuts. So basically, more businesses had more money to pay employees, and that was happening, and to hire employees. So you were hearing even major corporations talking about how they were boosting benefits, how they were boosting pay as a result of this tax cut. The Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. I'm sure you guys can harken back to that. Now, to go to Biden's American Rescue Plan, which is a disastrous plan, the first thing that they did was they hurt working people more than they helped. How did they do this? The first thing they rolled out is a $15 minimum wage. And I know a lot of people out there saying $15 minimum wage. I deserve a $15 minimum wage. Okay, that's cool. You may feel like you deserve a $15 minimum wage, but you also have to deal with reality. And the reality is there are big major corporations. There are the big car manufacturers of the world, the Nikes, all of these elitist companies, all of these top 500, corporations that can afford a $15 minimum wage and obviously much more. But what about the mom and pop shop that's just getting started? They can only afford maybe a part-time employee, so on, etc., until they get the opportunity to build. So what you're doing is crushing them, not allowing them to grow. And the big Disney worlds of the world can just say, yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that. No big deal. No big deal. So essentially what you're doing is you're crushing the labor market. You're crushing mom and pop shops. You're crushing the middle class while you're the one, Joe Biden and Democrats, helping the wealthiest of the wealthy with these major in these major corporations. And here's something else you need to know. Here's a stat for you. As far as the Build Back Better plan, which is Build Back Broke, only 5% of that money, the $1.9 trillion, actually went to COVID relief. Okay? They just straight up lied to you. So they gaffled 95% of that money. Where did that money go? $90 billion was earmarked for a bailout of union pension plans. Did you guys know that? And they were underfunded. But this union bailout gets about twice as much funding of the COVID-19 testing and contact tracing analysts were saying. So the unions got twice as much money to pay back into the Democrat coffers, which is essentially going to happen, than what we got from COVID relief, despite the fact that Build Back Better or the American Rescue Plan was supposed to help with COVID relief. They're just a bunch of liars. The fifth thing, Biden said, under my plan, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in new taxes. Nobody, you know how he does that, nobody, because he doesn't know what else to say, so he just says one additional word to try to show strength, to try to show that he's not a dementia patient. But inflation is a tax. Inflation is a tax, and mostly a tax on the poor and the middle class. If your dollar is worth less, if you can't afford to buy as much than what as what you were able to buy under Trump, that's a tax. That is a tax. So Biden's failed $4.6 trillion Build Back Broke spending bill passed the House of Representatives, but met defeat in the Senate, thank God. And it would have increased, this according to the Heritage Foundation, actually, this according to the left-leaning Tax Policy Center, but met defeat in the Senate, and it would have increased taxes directly, indirectly for Americans who make less than $400 a year. Also, according to the Tax Policy Center, which is a left-leaning organization, Biden's plan would increase taxes on the middle income Americans. They said specifically. So, quote, taking into account all major tax provisions, roughly 20 to 30% of middle income households would pay more in taxes in 2022, they said. Among those with a tax increase, low and middle income households would pay an additional $100 or less on average. So, not tons, but it is a tax. Those making $200,000 to $500,000 would pay an average of about $230 more. So the Build Back Broke plan raises taxes. In fact, it would increase capital gains taxes. And quite frankly, I don't mind this for these anti-American corporations. I'm of the opinion that these anti-American corporations that are woke and voluntarily give up their trade secrets to China in order to do business to China should lose their patent pending status for new products right here in the United States. Make them hurt. If they want to sell out America, screw them. That's the way I see it. It would increase capital gains taxes and would increase the corporate tax rate to 26.5%, which would indirectly decrease wages and increase consumer prices. Biden's taxes will affect the working class. The plan also would raise nicotine taxes substantially. The sixth thing.
That means make more cars and semiconductors in America, more infrastructure and innovation in America, more goods moving faster and cheaper in America, more jobs where you can earn a good living in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient, and tax credit for it.
All right, so Biden wants to bring back more manufacturing jobs to America. Listen, again, not unless you deregulate, not unless you make America competitive, and not just your homeboys that are funding the Democrat Party in these major corporations. But mom and pop businesses have to come back. We need kids in trade school, not just college and universities, getting brainwashed in left-wing lingo and left-wing philosophy. If you want to bring the economy back, we really need an all-of-the-above approach. We need to be energy independent again in order to get manufacturing here, get it back in numbers that are just absolutely booming. And we have to be, dare I say it, Biden was trying to say sound MAGA without saying it, you're going to have to be America first. Any smart nation is going to put their country first. It doesn't mean we ignore what's happening around us or around the globe, but it means it's just like your own household. How the heck are you going to take care of someone else if you can't even take care of what's going on in your own household? It's really simple. That's not racist. That's not, Nazi-esque or any of that kind of nonsense. So Biden talks about lowering your costs and lower the deficit. He says one way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I have a better plan to fight inflation, he said. The guy's complete. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Neither does the left. All of these demand justice people, all they want to do is just destroy our economy, usher in this new Green Deal economy, or usher in this global fascism where we're just the peons, where all these global elites and the elites right here in the United States of America, the John Kerrys of the world, the Bidens of the world are reigning from on high while we get to slave and suffer to help them live their lavish lifestyles. I can't stand these people. But Biden goes on to say, lower your costs, not your wages. Make more cars and semiconductors in America. You heard that. Okay, so this guy acts like it can just happen with the snap of a finger. Okay, so we're going to make semiconductor. Okay, all right. If we're going to do that, deregulate, you can't even handle you and Pete Booty. And I say, get your mind out of the gutter. I'm saying that simply because the guy stinks. He doesn't know what he's doing either. This guy is in charge of the supply chain issues, and he's doing nothing to make them better. It's absolutely insane. Why don't you work on that? Why don't you guys focus on that? Your presidency might actually do some good things if it were. But just to reiterate again, make more cars and semiconductors in America. You heard him say it. More infrastructure and innovation in America. More goods moving faster and cheaper in America. They're just words. This guy has no idea how to make this happen. None. My plan to fight inflation, he goes on to say, Biden does, will lower your costs and lower the deficit. All right, so last year under Biden, he failed to sell Democrats on his $4.6 trillion Build Back Broke plan that would have caused you to become more broke. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And thank God he failed. He said that it wouldn't add a single penny to the national debt or the annual budget deficit. What a liar. And now keep in mind, the deficit and debt are two different things. Our debt has now exceeded, our national debt has now exceeded over $30 trillion. But as far as our deficits are concerned, that's basically our annual budget, even though we don't do annual budgets anymore. We do a continued resolution. So ultimately, we just keep spending money with no control, no fiscal responsibility. It's insane. Why Republicans, one of the things that they should be running on is a balanced budget amendment. That needs to happen. We need to get our fiscal house in order. But going back to this, here's the truth. This is according to the Congressional Budget Office, not necessarily right wing, if you will, but the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO. This guy talks about he's going to lower costs and lower the deficit. The CBO determined that Democrat spending bill would increase the deficit by $3 trillion from 2022 to 2031. The $1.2 trillion infrastructure spending bill that passed with some Republican support, unfortunately, will add $256 billion to the deficit, according to the CBO. So you guys are going to go out and buy a Lexus, some of you maybe a condo townhome, and you're never going to get to see it. This is what this spending does. We never think about it in those terms, but go out and find yourself, some type of luxury item that you wouldn't buy otherwise because you can't afford, and essentially you've just bought it. The more the government spends, the more you're going to pay in interest over time. The more, the less your money is going to be worth. The seventh thing, fiscal responsibility. He talks about. So by the end of the year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office. The only president ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. The budget deficit totaled $2.77 trillion. This, according to the AP, for 2021. That's still the second highest deficit on record after the $3.13 trillion the previous year when Trump was still president. So you're talking about what he's talking about, what Biden is trying to lie to you about. The reason why his deficit might be less than Trump's is simply because he didn't have to deal with the onslaught of the pandemic, of the Wuhan pandemic. All right. He inherited what could have been a booming economy. We were coming out of essentially coming out of the pandemic, or we were starting to see it over the horizon. I know we had the Delta variant. I know that it did some damage, but we weren't offering therapeutics. We could have been out of this. We could have been out of this mess a long time ago. He inherited vaccines. He inherited an economy that was coming back. He decided to spend more with this American Rescue Plan, which put more middle-class people on welfare, made more middle-class people lazy. The guy is just a complete and utter joke, not to mention inflation just soared under this guy. So the deficits in both years reflects what happened with the pandemic. We know this, AP, but that's what they said. So here's the budget deficit pre-pandemic. So before the deficit ballooned during 2 years of the Wuhan virus, the highest, the biggest deficit had been a shortfall of about $1.4 trillion. That was in 2009, as the U.S. spent heavily to lift the country out of that recession during that time, during the 2008 financial crisis. So we are spending like drunken politicians. All of this stuff needs to stop. The CBO also projects that the deficit will fall to $1.15 trillion in the current budget year and dip below. Thank God. And that's because he didn't get his bill passed. But if he does get some type of rendition of the Build Back Broke plan passed, those numbers are going to skyrocket. So right now, $1.5 trillion in the current budget year, and it'll be $1.15 trillion in the current budget year. However, the CBO projects the deficit again will surpass $1 trillion a year from 2025 to 2031. And then you got rising energy costs because you have these global elitists that are supposedly trying to fight a worldwide climate change or global warming. And it's a complete and utter nonsense. If you guys just paid attention to the winter season this year was completely insane. But Biden said in his speech, I want to cut energy costs for families an average of $500 a year by combating climate change. Okay, now the air was cleaner under Trump. All right, even though we were taking an all of the above approach with energy, we were fracking clean, drilling clean. We were doing everything cleanly, if you will. All right, so Biden said that Americans would save an average of $500 annually by joining together to combat climate change. He says, let's provide investments and tax credits to weatherize your homes and businesses to be energy efficient, and you get a tax credit. Double America's clean energy production and solar, wind, and so much more. These are renewables. Those renewables don't work. Solar, wind, wood, all of that kind of crap. Just go back and look at the PragerU video on the Texas freeze. I want you to check that out. This stuff is complete and utter nonsense. All right. And plus, in order to make solar panels and all these products, I mean, obviously, except for wood, but to make these products, you got to use materials that do damage to the environment. Not to mention that China controls the solar market, the solar energy market, and they're polluting like crazy. And they intend to go all in on coal because they want to combat these morons in the world at the World Economic Forum. The same is true for Putin. It's a total joke. So we're playing this game as Americans while we're buying oil from Russia that are all in on coal. It's such a joke. So again, the most effective way to promote environmentally friendly innovation is through economic freedom. Let people produce. Of course, you need some regulation to keep some things clean. But this, according to the Index of Economic Freedom, they write, countries with greater economic freedom tend to fare better on protecting the environment than countries with more government-directed economies because they have an incentive to. People want their air to be clean. People want their drinking water to be clean. And they're more apt to buy from companies that say they're doing that, but giving them the products that they want, not products that the government is demanding. In 2020, America already had spent more than $100 billion on wind. This is according to Stephen Moore, the economist. And solar energy, despite the fact that less than 10% of our energy comes from the wind and sun. These things will be completely unreliable. The renewable energy will in bad times, and it's expensive to do just that. Here's what Forbes said: electric vehicle may or may not save money depending upon a host of factors, which will vary depending upon your location, your driving habits, and your choice of vehicle. With rising gas prices, electric vehicles may be looking more appealing to many Americans in 2022. But in February 2021, the average price of gasoline, or in February 2021, the average price of gasoline was $2.50 a gallon. That's according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. But last month, it had risen to $3.50 a gallon, and it's still going up, guys. And that's being done intentionally by the Biden administration because they want you to go to electrical vehicles. But electrical vehicle owners spend an average of 60% less on gasoline. Using a commercial recharging station for an electric car costs anywhere between $11.50 and $45 per charge. Here's the problem. There's some child labor involved in electrical batteries from the Congo. Not to mention, what are you going to do with those batteries? How are you going to dispose of those batteries? That's going to do tons of damage to the environment. And here's the big lie about EVs, about electrical vehicles. They actually do more damage to the environment than fossil fuel cars do. Than cars with combustible engines. So just in the production phase. So yes, when you have them, when you own them, they run clean. They do run cleaner than cars with combustible engines. But in their production, they do more damage to the environment than typically probably the lifetime of a car that uses an old school combustible engine. And then, not to mention, the EVs do more damage because then you got to get rid of the lithium batteries. What damage do you think they do to the environment? Electric vehicles are a joke. They may be fun if you want them for fun, so on, etc. So be it. But it's just virtue signaling. The next thing, suppressing and subverting the vote. So Biden said the most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and to have it counted, and it's under assault. In state after state, new laws have been passed not only to suppress the vote, to subvert entire elections. What a liar. But he called for the Senate to pass 2 federal election bills. That's the Freedom to Vote Act and also the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. But Biden wasn't specific on how people are suppressing the vote or subverting the vote. A total of 19 states enacted new laws. And by the way, excuse me, how are voters being suppressed when we had more voters come out in 2020 than ever in American history? Who was suppressed? Give me the names. Give me the numbers. Give me the addresses. Who was suppressed? No one was suppressed. These people just say that because a bunch of emotional morons buy into it. So voter ID requirements are part of the problem. He says that's suppressing the vote, asking people to show that they really are who they are. Why wouldn't you want to do that unless you were cheating? Another thing that sensible freedom lovers want to do is curb the controversial practice of ballot harvesting that allows political operatives to basically canvass communities and distribute large quantities of ballots and be present in a voter's home when he or she votes. That should not happen. It should be your vote, your choice. Nobody should be able to know what you're voting if you don't want them to know, or how you're voting. 3, requires states to remove names of dead voters and other ineligible voters. What's wrong with that? Dead people shouldn't be voting. I know that they are a major constituency in the Democrat Party, but it should not be happening. Also, many states also ban private funding of election administration. We know that Mark Zuckerberg helped buy some of the election for Democrats. This should not be happening as well. Georgia passed a new voting law. You heard the left go crazy. They're racist. They're bigoted. They're all this kind of stuff. But they're Democrat states whose laws are more strict or more restrictive than Georgia, including New York, Colorado, New Jersey, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Rhode Island. All of these laws, all of these states have stricter, not to mention Delaware, Biden's home state, have stricter voting regulations than does the new Georgia law. If you ask me, Georgia did not go far enough. I want to play one more audio clip for you as we get ready to close out on this last topic, but I want to talk to you about transgender. transgender rights. So we'll get to that in just a second. But here's what Biden had to say about addressing Americans who aren't heterosexual. And for our what the hell is a president doing talking about people's sexuality? Seriously. This makes no sense to me. But he says, and for our LGBTQ plus Americans, see, they always have to keep adding to the alphabet soup, if you will, of human beings, simply because they have to keep the victim groups expanding. When people grab some common sense, they stop voting Democrats. When people pay attention to their checkbook, they stop voting Democrat. When people stop hating people just because of the color of their skin, they stop voting Democrat. It's as simple as that. So they got to keep this gravy train going. So it's going to be LGBTQ, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, and Y, and Z. By the time the Democrat Party is through adding victim groups. But here's some audio that I want to play from you from the dementia patient in the White House on the transgender community. Go ahead, Kate.
For our LGBTQ plus Americans, let's finally get the Bipartisan Equality Act to my desk. The onslaught of state laws targeting transgender Americans and their families, it's simply wrong. The State of the Union is strong because you, the American people, are strong.
This is completely insane. Why a president of the United States is catering to a group of people that have gender dysphoria is totally insane to me. And Republicans, conservatives, don't be afraid to call it what it is. I'm sorry, you're not loving and you're not compassionate by buying into a lie. Men can't be women. Women can't be men. I don't care if they chop off their dingling or do something with their vagina. I don't care. Anatomically, these people cannot be the opposite sex. That is not science. And I'm sorry, but the fact, and especially since there's such a high suicide rate, this is absolute nonsense. And for those of you that are out there, oh, we got to be so compassionate it's none of your business what people do. The government needs to remember when Bill Clinton used to say, we need to stay out of people's bedrooms. You know what? We need to stay out of the freaking doctor's offices and surgery offices when it comes to the lesbian and gay. I don't play the LGBTQ. I don't play that game. You're either lesbian or you're gay. If you're bisexual, you're confused. If you're transgender, you have gender dysphoria. If you're questioning, that means you're heterosexual, but you're thinking about going gay. So you're confused too. So let's not play this game just adding letters to this stuff. It drives me insane. It is not compassionate when you understand that gender dysphoric people suffer with depression, anxiety at astronomical numbers, commit suicide at astronomical rates. That is not compassion. You're just a weakling and you're a coward because you don't want to stand up to the rest of society. It makes no sense, and it's not good for a society. Let's face it, people. The only way society thrives is marriage between a man and a woman that can reproduce other human beings. Can gay people, and I'm not mad at gay people, but can they produce other human beings? No. Or reproduce other human beings? No, they cannot. Can lesbians reproduce other human beings? No, they cannot. They can adopt, and that's great, all right? But no, they can't reproduce human beings. That's why you need a government should, I believe, lift up, exalt male-female relationships. Otherwise, all this other stuff is just about, perpetuating victim classes. All right, guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this episode of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please, again, follow me on Facebook. Carl Jackson Radio is where you can find me and share. Twitter and Parler at Carl Jackson Show. Please subscribe and share the podcast everywhere podcasts are found. Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube. Make sure you click that bell so you get notifications, and Rumble. All right, guys, until next time, don't grow weary doing good, and God bless you.